All right, good morning, guys. Hope you all are doing well on this Tuesday. I'm wave meteorologist Brian Good. Welcome to Storm Talk. Although it's really, I didn't have a graphic to say hurricane talk, but you guys get the idea, right? Yes, we're going to be talking about Idalia today, and of course the impacts heading into Florida as we into later on tonight into tomorrow. This is the last 12 hours that they have really to get out of the way completely as it moves in. And then we'll get into impacts, and there will be some indirect impacts that we'll see locally in this kind of a weather pattern here into wave country, and of course, how our pattern is trending overall as we look down the road. You can't really tell it right now, but this is Clearwater Beach right now behind me. All you see, of course, is the ocean blue, but sky is quite blue in the distance. And the reason for that is not because it just loves color blue, but it's because that is nothing but storm clouds in the distance heading towards from the outer bands toward the western coast of Florida, which I'll show you here in just a second. So I'm going to go through several camera views. I'm going to try to, and I know some of you are like, I really am not that interested in the hurricane. You know, it's not here. I get that. And I don't want this to be all just about hurricane. I'm going to get into our weather pattern as well. But a lot of you are passionate about these kind of systems. They do intrigue you just as much as they do us weather weenies out there. But we want to cover that. We want to make sure to cover any impacts that we are expecting if you have friends or family in Florida where we think some of the worst may hit. And then, of course, tie that back into our local weather as well. So I'm going to try to cover it all because we can't do all this in 2 minutes and 45 seconds on TV. It's a pain. All right, so let's see. Actually, we got a comment. Chris said, we just left Clearwater 2 days earlier. They left yesterday there. Currently in Gatlinburg, just finished your vacation. Yeah, we had to do a mandatory evacuation. Yeah, man, that's awful. That happens a lot this time of the year. I don't know if they even do vacation insurance on trips anymore. Sometimes they do. I think cruise ships may do that, but it's tough because you really take a risk this time of year that it may be a quiet hurricane season. And then at the same time, you know, you get caught in the middle. But some of that is, if you're an adventurous family, some of that's part of the fun is trying to adapt to the weather. And you guys, Chris, have done just that. You found a way to get around it and still have fun in Gatlinburg. So congrats to you on that. I'm glad you're safe. All right, let me skip along to the current radar locally. We'll start there, and then I'll work my way backwards a bit. This is our radar. This is not Idalia, by the way, but you can see some of the showers in southeast areas of wave country. We've talked about that past couple of days. That would be a lingering spot, but so far it is not causing any issues at all. It's just outside of our area, so we're looking good there. So let's widen the view out. There is Idalia and there is Franklin. And, you know, we haven't had a chance to talk too much about Franklin, but man, look at that eye. Powerful hurricane. I'm not sure if it ever reached Cat 5 strength or not. I missed the 8 a.m. update. but I know it was getting to like 155, which is 1 mile per hour away from becoming Cat 5. So it was getting up there. But look at that eye, very, very formed, symmetrical looking. And what I mean by that is when you say you were to divide the line up to the middle of the hurricane, if it's about the same look on both sides, it's more of a buzzsaw kind of look. That is a sign of a very intense hurricane when you have the symmetrical look to it. And that is Bermuda. I can't tell from this satellite. I believe Bermuda is over here, if I remember right. So this means that Franklin will likely kind of go around Bermuda to the north there. But close enough. This is a big enough system that there will be some impacts in that area. In fact, oh, wait a minute. I got a live view. I forgot about that. This is live in Bermuda. Right now, it looks great. Certainly can see the clouds in the distance, the higher deck of clouds. But we'll be watching a camera feed into Bermuda. Isn't it wild that we have cameras like everywhere now to track weather? It's pretty awesome. All right, let's get to Idalia, where you can easily see that the eye is forming in the past 5 to 6 hours. It's into the deepest part now of the ocean. That's really Atlantic Basin is right in this section. Water temperature is at its warmest right about here, north and east of its track. It hasn't gotten to that point yet. So there is a chance that if it hits that spike in the water temperature, which is roughly 90 to 94 degrees on water temperature, that could cause a rapid category jump. We have seen that before in the Gulf of Mexico, so it wouldn't be too shocking to see it. There are quite a bit of rain bands on the outer edges of this already flying through. Let me get rid of the satellite so you can see easily. Now, again, it's like, well, wait a minute. This doesn't look very symmetrical. What's the other rain? We don't have radar on the other side of this. So we can only see one side here of Idalia, but you get the idea of the feeder bands. These are the dangerous ones too. I mean, yeah, everyone looks at the eye. Everyone looks at the eye. But these feeder bands are going to be hitting through Key West today, Miami, Fort Myers, and Tampa. These can produce isolated tornadoes. And we'll start to introduce the flooding threat too for not only the Keys, but all the way up to Tampa Bay itself. So it's got a long stretch here. It's stretching its legs out pretty far in that area. But again, let's look at the wind gust. And this is the current gust. I apologize. I thought I had centered more south, but Tampa is coming in about 25 right now. Charleston, them a little gusty, but they're not to the system yet. But in general, most of the winds are just offshore. I'll let you know once we get a better handle on the winds coming up in the new update. All right, speaking of that, let's run you down the numbers as they stand now. 80 mile per hour Cat 1 on the scale, forecast to go Cat 2 by the, obviously just after lunch today, as it heads off to the north now. Should be a little more northeast. There's the Cat 3 potential as we get to about the wee hours of your Wednesday, so late tonight, early tomorrow morning. The eye will be bearing down on the Cedar Key area between Tallahassee and Cedar Key, all the way to Tampa, that Big Bend area of Florida, an area that has not witnessed a hurricane at this angle, this approach angle, and more than, since 1950, I believe it is. It's been a long time. So this area is very wooded through the central areas of Florida. It is a little more populated. In this section of Florida, also around Tallahassee and Panama City, some around Gainesville, but there is actually a lot of forestry, if you will. You may not think of forestry in Florida, but there is a lot of wooded area in that central area of northern Florida. But that is the angle that it's taking right into there. And because this is very shallow water and the speed would be fairly fast, storm surge by far is going to be one of the bigger issues. And right now, the idea is it's going to stay just off the coast of Charleston, maybe tracking along. If you guys are familiar with Highway 17, it may stay close to Highway 17, which still, that's a flat area. So the eye isn't going to just disintegrate as it moves over land. It's flat land. It's not enough friction to kind of really disrupt the day a ton. It could still pull in some heat energy from the water surrounding it. So it will try to maintain as long as it can, even as it scoots across Charleston. Maybe we can do a tropical storm, but you guys have heard this many times. There's not much of a difference between a weak hurricane and a high-end tropical storm. Still a lot of big impacts with flooding, especially, and battering waves on the coastline. If it were to go back over into the Charleston Harbor or head out into the Atlantic, just 40, 60 miles, that it may maintain hurricane intensity. That is possible. Either way, something to watch, because look at the track. Confidence inside this line is fairly high on its path. But once you get into the central Atlantic area or west central Atlantic, you notice that the cone of uncertainty grows. The reason for that, as we're talking about this yesterday, that high pressure is building north of it. That is going to stop Idalia, and we just don't know exactly where Idalia is going to go next. Could it turn around and do a U-turn and come back to the United States? That is, I think, possible. It's not likely, but I do think it's possible. Here is that bathwater we talked about, right, going the path of the hurricane, right into some very warm water here, approaching 90 degrees, right along the coastline. This is the cone of uncertainty, but still, you got to keep in mind, this is the eye we're talking about. These feeder bands are going to be hitting into Tampa. And even once the eye is still, say, around Cedar Key, the bands will be on this side of Florida, but they're going to really be beating up Daytona, Melbourne Beach area, all the way up to Jacksonville Beach. They're going to be hitting that area of the coast as well, even though you're not on that same side of Florida. It's just such a large system. The momentum is going to still push the waves up the coastline of Florida on both sides. So Florida in general is just getting hit in one of the worst ways you really can, because it cuts off just about the main interstate flow to get to other resources into southern Florida. So if there's a lot of wind damage here and a lot of trees down and power lines down, you guys know there's a very narrow thing to work with between I-75 and 95 on trying to get resources south of this area if there's a lot of damage, and that cuts off the rest of Florida, leaving the rest of southern Florida especially a little more at risk without having a lot of utility help or supplies for a while. So this is a big ordeal that they're going to be watching. All right, so it moves on by. Here's storm surge. Again, this is basically the hurricane taking the amount of water that it has, and it carries along with it, kind of like it just carries a baby with it. It's carrying along with it. That storm surge, then once the ground gets shallow, it doesn't really look too tremendous out in the sea. Trust me, if you're out on a boat, you would feel it. But once the ground gets shallow and becomes shallower and shallower and shallower, then the waves end up becoming a little more inundated into areas you normally would not expect it. And this is where they've issued, of course, so many mandatory evacuations around portions of Tampa and certainly into the Big Bend area of Florida. Hopefully everyone's already out now. If not, you got to get out today because storm surge of 9 feet, maybe higher, that can lead to catastrophic event, because you're going to end up with water that's going to go higher than many of the roofs of the homes and some of these areas. And if you don't get out in time, you're going to be stuck on top of a roof. And in some cases, the roof will be dislodged from home, and then you're really in big trouble. So just get away, got friends or family there. And if you have someone you know that just doesn't have any friends there, has no one to come get them and get them out of safe harm, and they're not, maybe they have some type of mobility issue at that point, reach out to local authorities and say, hey, I got a friend that needs help. They need to get out. Try to get those calls made now. Don't wait until after and say, hey, can you go check on my friend? You need to be in touch with them now and make sure they have a plan. All right. It'll ease the stress of everyone involved and for first responders too, because you don't want them in harm's way. Because for a while, first responders will not be able to get into this area as the storm is hitting. They have to hold back as well. With their crews, the storm will pass, and then they'll come back out again and reassess what's going on. So you got to be ready to handle and be able to basically take care of yourselves the best you can until the storm has passed there on that. Here's the power outage index. You ready for this? This is an animation. Look right in the central portion here as it moves on shore. You can see the eye as it moves in. You can see how it's listing, obviously, catastrophic power outages. No shocker there. Wind speeds, they can go 120, 130 miles per hour, or even stronger on gusts, are going to do a lot of damage, a lot of tree damage. Again, this is a very wooded area, so a lot of tree damage, power lines, and that could even be felt all the way into Charleston and South Carolina as well. It's going to go right up against 17. I think 17 is a very fair corridor. If you guys know how it's a very infamous road, I think the path of Idalia is going to follow right along that. So that's the wind side of that. Rainfall is probably one of the bigger ones here, just because we have what we call a predecessor type rainfall event where we've got the front that came through here this past weekend and gave us our severe weather and crazy storms this past Friday. Well, that front is actually still here in the Carolinas, and it's merging with Idalia. So you have two different heavy rain flash flooding events that are happening here. And these PREs, when they happen, they usually can set very high records and become catastrophic on rainfall. So it's not just Idalia, it's front and Idalia combining together, leading to an incredible amount of rainfall. And this is going to cause a lot of airline delays, perhaps even for Atlanta. We'll have some delays out of this too, just because how close they are. But certainly in Columbia and Charleston and Wilmington, North Carolina, we'll have to deal with all of that. So we'll keep you updated. Again, expectation on this is a landfall at some point, I would say in the next 14 hours in the Big Bend area of Florida. But impacts will be starting up later on this afternoon. During the overnight hours tonight into early on Wednesday, it'll be nothing but images when you turn on the TV tomorrow morning of meteorologists standing in the middle of the wind, probably. It's going to be a lot of just high wind reports coming at that point. Very windy day. All day long, though, on Wednesday, will be about it tracking across northern Florida and Georgia. And then as we into Wednesday night, it'll be heading toward the low country of South Carolina next. Okay, so what does this all mean down the road for us? As we mentioned, anytime you get a tropical system or systems like we have with Franklin and Idalia, you end up with usually a ridge that's in place, and that's certainly the case. We've got our ridge, which is our heat dome that's going to be in our place, and that's going to allow for the 90s, but without the high humidity. Idalia is actually taking away a lot of the moisture field being pumped into the system. So all we have to really deal with is just moisture from our trees and our grass areas, and not so much a tremendous amount of help of high humidity coming from the tropical system. So we end up with a little bit of help, thanks to Idalia, to where our next round of heat will not be a repeat of the last round. But still, it'll be hot. Low to mid 90s are on tap for the area. And here's Idalia, by the way. This is, what day is it? September 5th. Here's Idalia. Watch what happens. Yep, going back west. Going back west again, this time toward the mid-Atlantic. I think yesterday there was the GFS model, had to go out here in the Atlantic and then went back over Florida again and then went into Texas. I mean, why not? It's 2023. Everything's been weird this year. So it's, I guess, possible. But the idea that the Euro has stopped its eastern move and is now doing a U-turn and may come into the Carolina coast is interesting. So Idalia may be on the map for a long time. As far as the heat wave potential, excessive heat, and I mean excessive like 110 heat index kind of potential. Right now, we're in the low end risk of that. It is much higher, a little more to our west. Right now, I still think low to mid 90s with a small heat index, but nothing too high. But still, low to mid 90s is going to be a little annoying to deal with as we head down the road. All right, there you go. That's your Idalia small update here locally. And we'll keep you updated today. I got a feeling, I mean, social media has let up so much, right? Actually, he's Jim Cantori down there. You know, I'm not sure where Jim is. They have like usually 8 or 9 crews going to have all over the place. And I'm sure they'll have them around Tampa and Cedar Key. I'm sure they'll have someone in Jacksonville, Savannah, and maybe Charleston. I think they'll have crews everywhere. They usually do, the Weather Channel does a really good job on hurricane days like this. Karen said, yes, he's on his way. All right, there. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate that. Karen, will Idalia meet up with Franklin? No, Franklin's on the move. Once it gets past Bermuda, it accelerates. It'll be able to beat the block that will slow Idalia down. It'll get ahead of it and cut it off at the pass. So basically, Franklin's on its way to become a typical low pressure, but eventually heading toward England. Rebecca, what impacts on Tampa? Storm surge, severe weather with isolated tornadoes, very heavy rainfall. I'm not sold on the idea of a constant wind issue like you would have with the eye. The eye should stay west of Tampa at this point, but it still will be nasty in Tampa. Again, the airport stopped its flights about 10 hours ago. And well, both airports did in Tampa. Actually, the other airport is at PIE. I think it's the letters at PIE for their airport in Tampa. It's 3 p.m. today, I believe, that they are stopping their flights for today. Okay, everyone looks good. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to be monitoring this. We do have on our Wave Weather Now channel, you will see in the bottom right, it's a constant loop and update about Idalia that's going to be staying on all the time throughout the storm. So if you want to check out the latest information there, you can check that out. We will try to get the stats too on Idalia listed. So again, just like old school Weather Channel days, we're going to try to have nothing but the Wave Weather Now be a source for just all weather information for you guys. So make sure to check it out. Since I'm down here, it'll kick back on again after I'm done rambling. And then as the day wears on today, we're going to be checking in with some of our other stations that we have across Florida and their meteorologists and seeing how the reports and see how things are trending. So make sure to tune in our newscast this afternoon as we track the storm moving on through. At least for us, the weather does indeed look quiet. I'm fine with that. Perfectly fine with that. Now, if we can just get it cooler, it'll be even better. That may take a little bit more time. Hang in there, guys. See you on the flip side.